I was hoping for today's show that I could talk about the oil market, that there wouldn't be that big of Fed's official balance sheet increase. There wouldn't be a crazy repo announcement. So I could just talk about Chevron's $10 billion or so write-down, talk about how that write-downs, a pattern of write-downs matter to manage bad management, but instead, that's not how life works out, and we get news stories with this Repo Madness clown show. The Repo Madness clown show! Starring Jerome Jingles the Clown Powell and the Federal Reserve Cartel Clown Posse. So it just gets more and more ridiculous. Looks like Jim Bianco has been getting some leaks from his friends inside the Fed. I know he applied for a job to work there. So it sounds like he's friendly with some Federal Reserve employees, some other ones. It sounds like he was tipped off because he made that outlandish prediction saying that the amount of repos would be at $500 billion in 2 weeks, not too long ago, about maybe a week or less ago, and here we are, not even 2 weeks, and the amount of extra repos that were increased were absolutely massive. So today we had a number of stuff besides the repo announcement. Let me just talk about I think finally the combination of the Fed's official balance sheet increases. Market participants are looking at the amount of Fed's balance sheet increases since the end of August, and they're starting to matter, along with this newest repo announcement, and that's why the dollar index is finally below 97 for the first time in 5 months. It's at 96.75. So I think you have, finally it's starting to matter, all these repo announcements to the dollar. It didn't matter that much for a while, because all these other central banks were all doing QE and all announcing crazy programs as well. But I think this additional repo, along with what we found out today with the Fed's official balance sheet, because remember, on Thursdays, I update you guys on the official balance sheet increase for the Fed. So the Fed's, let me get that out of the way first. So the Fed's official balance sheet increase is up to $4,995,491,000,000. So it is a $30 billion increase from last week. In 3 weeks since November 20th, it's up $65 billion. And since the end of August, when the official Fed's balance sheet got as low as $3.759946 trillion, the Fed's official balance sheet, I did the math for you guys, is now up over $335.5 billion. And the not QE program is only $60 billion per month, so that increase should only be $120 billion from the treasury purchases of the Fed buying in the not QE. So you do the math there of subtracting $120 billion from the amount of the official Fed's balance sheet increase since the end of August, and there's another 215.545, give or take, billion. That's been added to the Fed's official balance sheet. My best guess, my educated guess, is that's from repo. And it's these term repos. So the Fed increased today in the official statement. They increased the overnight repo up to $150 billion. But a lot of these banks are not drawing on the overnight repo because the banks want use of the money as a loan for longer than overnight. So the banks are not taking... Remember, this was, I want to say 6 weeks ago. The Fed increased the amount of overnight repo to $120 billion, and initially the banks were taking more of the overnight repo, and then slowly the banks started transitioning. We don't know which banks still, because the Fed claims that they're going to tell us in 2 years. We're going to find out with Freedom of Information Act. I'm very skeptical. We're going to find out unless there's some type of leak or whistleblower who leaks. I very seriously doubt we'll find out which banks or which hedge funds. I do have my theory, though. On my last show about repo, I did do some financial detective work, and I do have a theory about which one of the hedge funds, because of their banking relationship with Bank of New York Mellon, may have some problems with repo. Also with these FX forward current dollar swaps. So FX currency swaps. There's some interesting things that came out in the last couple days with the Bank of International Settlements report. And guess what? Most people did not cover this. So I'm going to talk about it. this interview, because I haven't heard anyone else talk about it. So this Bloomberg article came out on December 8th initially, and then they updated it on December 9th by Liz McCormick. And its repo blowup was fueled by big banks and hedge funds, Bank of International Settlements says. And the article was pretty good. But what was most interesting to me was this interview, the video interview from Bloomberg TV that they attached in the video section with Claudio Borio, who is head of the Monetary and Economic Department at the Bank of International Settlements. I guess he's Italian, but he speaks very good English. And he was responsible for either co-authoring or authoring that part of the report about the repo area. So let me play. Actually, I'm not sure if I should play that. Do you think Nanny Bloomberg will get me in trouble if I play like a minute of the audio clip? Do you think I'm going to get in trouble if I play 1 minute of a under 6 minute video clip? Do you think Bloomberg's gonna like report me? Am I gonna get a copyright violation for doing that? Do you guys think I should play the 1 minute? Why bother? It's all fake news anyway. Okay, let me just play. Okay, I remember where it was.
What we say in the quarterly review that just...
Okay, 1 second. Let me get to the right part. I was debating whether or not I should play it.
So we have been watching closely, and that is the FX swaps. Now, FX swaps are very closely related to the repo market, and they have become even more closely related as a result of the fact that the maturity of the FX swaps has been declining. As you know, the FX swaps, partly as a result of that, they have been the main contributors to the increase in FX volumes that we have seen over the last 3 years. We had 2 surveys. The BIS produces regular surveys on this, and the QR, the quarterly review, goes into details. And the FX swap market is really huge. We're used to see only the component of dollar borrowing by non-U.S. Players on balance sheet, the on-balance sheet component, but the off-balance sheet component in the form of FX swaps is at least as large. Now, to give you an example, the borrowing of non-U.S. residents, non-banks outside the United States on balance sheet is of the order of 13 trillion. The amount of equivalent borrowing in FX swaps is probably even larger. And
okay, so he says that these hedge funds are involved. They've been leveraging up trades in bonds, but they've also been borrowing in repo and then leveraging up and doing derivatives trades, currency derivatives trades with forward dollar swaps. And I've talked about this at length for many, many months now, the amount of dollar-denominated debt that's outside the U.S. in non-financial institutions is absolutely enormous officially. So there's over $11 trillion. According to the Bank of International Settlements, this amount has doubled in the last 10 years. A lot of people were betting on a weak dollar. Now, what Claudio Borio just said was that off balance sheet, there's even more dollar liabilities than on balance sheet. He said there's at least, according to their research, 13 trillion in off balance sheet dollar liabilities. So there's a lot of people. This is going to exacerbate the dollar shortage. So it's not just China, it's emerging markets. Yeah, we all said the trade deal announcement today. They don't want to agree to sign anything. They don't want to show anything. It's just, I honestly don't trust China, and I don't know why Trump is doing a trade deal, because he's benefiting from pumping the stock market with tweets. I guess maybe it's to appease the Midwest farmers. Oh, Claudio Borio on Hidden Forces? Oh, okay, I didn't listen to that interview. But yeah, I just played a clip. So if you want to listen to the rest of the interview, it is less than 6 minutes in that Bloomberg article. So I think the dollar reacted very adversely to the additional repo announcement today, and when the Fed's official balance sheet came out. Okay, let me read. There's a good article from Zero Hedge. They actually changed the title. So initially, earlier today, on Thursday, December 12th, it said 350 billion in the title, and they changed it to 500 billion because there's been more research notes that came out. So the New York Fed's press release, I have a copy, the link to the press release, if you want to read the press release. It's pretty boring. But Jerome Powell actually tipped us off a couple days ago when he gave his last press conference for this year. In his last press conference of 2019, Powell said he's watching developments in the overnight lending market, or repo market, which saw borrowing costs rise to as high as 10%. Powell said he feels the Fed has controlled repo market since that episode, but as Jim Bianco says, they've drugged the repo market. They will put whatever amount of overnight repos or term repos, increase the size of term repos, increase the amount of term repos offered, extend the date of the term repos. I think I just saw in the press release today a new 32-day term repo. So there's now 14-day term repos, 15-day term repos, 32-day term repos, and that was after this week, the last batch of the 42-day. Last week, I think the 42-day. The second 42-day term repo kicked in, and then on Monday, the 28-day term repo kicked in. Might have to do a term repo drinking game, although I'm not going to participate while I'm doing the live stream show, because every time I say the phrase term repo, you'd probably be drunk. You know, I bet if someone made a goofy video with that, with like in a clown suit, with the term repo drinking game, I think it could get a lot of clicks. I'm not doing it because I'm not an alcoholic. Term repo. Everyone drink. Okay, so let me read this article. Massive, huge, largest ever in air quotes. Fed will flood market with gargantuan $500 billion in liquidity to avoid year-end repo crisis. In previewing today's Fed statement regarding repurchase operations on Tuesday, Curvature Securities repo expert Scott Skyrum said that he expects the Fed to announce a $50 billion at least term operation for Monday, December 23rd, double the current term ops. So the current term repos are $25 billion, so doubling the amount, and a new one layered on top of that, and a $50 billion at least term operation for Monday, December 30th. This prediction was in response to Zoltan Pozar's warning that reserve levels are too low, and the result would be a market crash that could spark QE4. The article came out moments after the New York Fed press release. The New York Fed published a latest commentary statement regarding repurchase operations, laying out the Fed's expected repo operations for the period December 13th through January 14th, and it blew Skyrum's. I'm messing up. It's Skyrm. Skirm's expectations out of the water. According to the statement, the New York Fed will continue to offer 2-week term repo operation. Oh, there we go. I said it again. Term repo operations twice per week, 4 of which span year end. In addition, the desk will also offer another large maturity term repo operation that spans year end. The amount offered in this operation will be at least $50 billion, just as Skirm expected. But there was more, much more, because this Repo Madness clown show will not end. In addition, to prevent a cascading year-end liquidity squeeze with emergency liquidity. Oh, but don't worry, it's not going to be on the official balance sheet. Fed overnight repo operations will continue to be held each day, and just to be safe, the Fed will go to town by substantially expanding their size. On December 31st, 2019, January 2nd, 2020, the overnight repo that does not qualify as term repo, so you do not have to drink, offering will increase to at least $150 billion to cover the, quote, turn in flood of overnight liquidity. By the way, I hope you guys know I'm joking about the drinking game, okay? I don't want to see nasty comments and emails. saying that I want people to die of alcohol poisoning, okay? I don't want any... I'm joking. FYI, because some people do take everything I say seriously. Sometimes I do joke. In addition, on December 30th, 2019, the desk will offer a $75 billion repo that settles on December 31st, 2019 and matures on January 2nd, 2020. And just in case that's not enough, the New York Fed's market desk also added that it intends to adjust the timing and amounts of repo operations as needed to mitigate the risk of money market pressures that could adversely affect policy implementation, consistent with the directive from the FOMC. What the Fed means is that in addition to expanding the size of this, quote, turn overnight repos to 150 billion, okay, they're calling it turn repos instead of overnight repos, the Fed will conduct a total of 9 term repos. There's that phrase again, term repos, because that's where the banks are going. The banks' overnight loans, no longer enough. The banks want to hold that loan money for 14-day, 15-day, 28-day, 32-day, and 42-day. That is the preference of the banks borrowing in repo. Covering the year-end turn from December 16th to January 14th, 8 of which will amount to $35 billion, and the first will be $50 billion, for a total injection of a whopping $365 billion in just the coming month. In other words, instead of QE4, the Fed will flood the repo market with a fire hose of liquidity. Here is how Curvature Skirm summarized this. One word, massive, a few words, the largest series of repo operations ever. Wow. So the Fed just threw even more repo out. They opened the emergency liquidity spigot full bore. You know, it seems that instead of currency swaps right now, we don't know how much is currency swaps, but it seems the Fed's preferred method of trying to put out any emergency derivatives fires or anything is with this term repos now. Overnight repo and term repo. Because as James Bullard said in a speech, about 2 months ago in London, that it really is month to month. The Fed is only trying to make sure things do not crash next month. So they're just trying to keep things going for another month. That's all. They're not even thinking about long term anymore. It's just about moving things month to month. So the largest series of repo operations ever, from this guy's notes, who is a repo expert, the Fed announced this repo operation scheduled for the next few weeks, and it's huge. Here is the calculations. There are now 2 existing 25 billion term repo operations over the turn already in the market, totaling 50 billion. The Fed committed to at least 150 billion overnight repo operation on year end. A REG start year end operation on the day before year end of 75 billion. Between now and year end, a total of 6 term repo operations totaling to 225 billion. So this was the most interesting one right here when I read this article. Between now and year end. So it's not even that long. Total of 6 term repo operations totaling 225 billion. All total, the Fed committed to pump 500 billion in the repo market over year end. Naturally, the turn from December 31st to January 2nd of 2020 rallied a bit today. So that's the overnight repo rate, I guess, trading from 4.25% yesterday to 3.8% today. Welcome to Dystopia. I was planning on doing a nice oil episode today. You know, something a little different, because I don't want to talk about repo all the time. I'm getting tired of talking about repo. But it's just craziness. It really is madness. And finally, the dollar index is starting to react to it. Because it had been stuck, it had always bounced off. When it had gotten into the low 97s on the dollar index, it had rallied pretty strongly. It bounced pretty strongly above 97. Reuters is reporting that Trump has agreed to cancel the new round of tariffs. Yes, I have heard, but that doesn't mean anything, because if you remember that phase 1 of the trade deal was agreed to in October, and within about 48 hours... It was announced on a Friday, if I remember correctly, in October. And within 48 hours over the weekend, China had said that they wanted, before they signed anything, China said, oh, we'll do this trade deal, but you have to agree to other concessions first. You have to remove all the tariffs before we buy any pork or soybeans. So I would not be surprised if China tried to pull that again. honestly, from what I've heard from sources, and this is secondhand information, whether Kyle Bass does public interviews and other secondhand sources from the trade negotiations, is that she cannot compromise at all. That's what I've heard. So if anyone's compromising, it's Trump. And I'm not really sure why Trump would need a compromise. Maybe he's worried about his polling numbers in the Midwest. But he has the stock market pumped really high, almost near all-time highs again on the Dow and the S&P, without actually just tweeting out that there's progress in the trade deal to fool high-frequency trading algorithms. Most of the financial professional human beings and most of the human beings that trade markets are not fooled. It's the high-frequency trading algorithms that are fooled by the tweets. Shell, I mean, 48 hours, 72 hours from now, this thing could fall apart again. Phase 1 was agreed to in October. Then nothing got signed. China wanted all tariffs removed before they bought more American pork and soybeans. China doesn't need the U.S.'s pork or soybeans. They've been buying like crazy from Brazil. They've been importing very dangerous quality pork from Africa, from what I'm hearing. They also imported donkey from Africa too, even though apparently a lot of Chinese don't like it. There was a Zero Hedge article about that. Apparently it was very inaccurate, saying that donkey is a delicacy in China, and my top source in mainland China was laughing at it, saying, no, donkey is not a delicacy in China. Donkey is like eating rat. That it's not a favorite among the people, but, you know, there are restaurants you can go to and order donkey. It's not popular, though. The WTO is a joke, but China has never been in compliance with the WTO rules anyway. They've never been in compliance with them for like 20 years. I'm aware of China's swine fever. Swine fever is actually all over Asia now. They've been slaughtering any pigs that try to come in from China in other Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries. Yeah, I'm aware of some of the more Chinese also eat like scorpions and on sticks. I've seen some of the shows with street food. And then there's weird ancient Chinese medicine. I've seen, so if you want to see some of that, there's ADV China videos where they drink like ancient Chinese medicine and the stuff just looks gross. I think it made one of the guys who drank it throw up. Brazil has really benefited from China putting tariffs and canceling their orders from American farmers on pork and soybeans. JBA Meats was the Brazilian company. I talked about it like 5 or 6 months ago. The stock went up over fourfold at one point. I think it was like $3 or $4 a share, and it went over 12. So it went up over threefold, almost fourfold, and then it corrected. A lot of factories are leaving China, Melikel. A lot of the supply chain is leaving China. The tariffs have accelerated it. The cheap labor factories are leaving China. They're going to Thailand, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Mexico. Doug asks, why won't everything just collapse? Well, I think the order is important, Doug, because there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we may never find out about. There's problems everywhere. I've been documenting problems. I should do a show on this. There's Indian bank bailouts. That's a problem. There's Chinese banks, Japanese banks, European banks. We have the American banks and American hedge funds with repo. So it's just a question of what collapses first and then what that brings down with it next. And whoever collapses first is going to have less negotiating power, in my opinion, in the next system. because the United Kingdom, England, with Winston Churchill, did not have as much negotiating power at the table for Bretton Woods. The U.S. had the negotiating power. Jay asks about the Seeking Alpha article about Sandstorm Gold. Just speculate from Goldstock Bull. I think it's just speculation. They increased their revolving credit facility, but that doesn't mean they're going to do a deal immediately. If they wait 6 months, they can do a larger deal. Or almost 6 months, they can do a larger deal. Look, Sandstorm, most people aren't aware of this. You're not hearing people talk. I should probably do another short little audio just for my Patreon account contributors. But Sandstorm Gold is going to be investing almost $200 million over the next 18 months, investing in more growth. There's a lot of extra cash coming in with cash flow and warrant money that comes in at the end of next year, and then they have a mining portfolio of mining stocks and mining debt that they can liquidate for cash. So all those things together, there's potentially $200 million more to invest in new deals. So this is going to be the premier growth stock, if it's not already. Probably in like 2 years. I don't think there's going to be any doubt. Good band name. Oh, you like it, Sean? The Federal Reserve Cartel Clown Posse. Dirty Bubbler Bubble Rising says the dates of these repos makes it so obvious that the Fed is helping banks cook their books for year end. Yes, that is part of it. I also think that the banks are transitioning their borrowing from overnight to term repo because they expect the Fed, and this is what JP Morgan was doing by buying all those treasuries. They were hoping the Fed was going to do larger, not QE, larger than $60 billion per month. So what these banks are doing is they're extending out their term repo. They're extending out the loan, how long that they can borrow the money for. And these loans are not all rolling off. Okay, some of these term repo loans are rolling off, but not all of them. As evidenced by the fact that the Fed's official balance sheet is, let me look at my calculator again, my calculator app. The Fed's official balance sheet is $215,545 million larger than the 2 months of not QE of $60 billion per month in bond purchases. So I think with these large banks that are tapping the repo markets, what they are betting on, in my opinion, is they're betting on they're going to keep rolling over these term repos until the Fed announces much larger, not QE, or a permanent repo facility. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Justin and Ben. I appreciate it. I told you, Ben, I email wallstreetformainstreet@gmail. Thought I told you that already. Not officially in a recession yet, Doug. But there's a lot of evidence that we are. I do not know why Jeff Gundlach did a 180 in the last week. Yes, the jobs numbers look good, but there's a lot of flaws in them. The headline jobs numbers look good, but they also basically double counted 40,000 auto workers that should not have been counted. Those were not new job creation. Those were auto workers that were on strike. Fritz says I should have named it the Insane Federal Reserve Clown Posse. I will try that next. And I was thinking of names for Ben Bernanke, so Ben Bozo the Clown Bernanke and Janet. It's tough saying this with a straight face. Okay, so that's why I'm starting to cackle. Janet Sprinkles the Clown Yellen, because she loves baking cookies. And she could wear this really hilarious, colorful Sprinkles the Clown. No. Not Felon Yellen. We're on a clown theme. We're on a clown show theme. It has to be like a clown name. It has to be like Bozo the Clown or something like that. Okay, it has to be... Put in the comment section after this video some clown theme names. You have to stay on point with the clown theme, okay? This is the Repo Madness clown show. And then we need a Johnny Carson gong. I'm not sure where to find it on the internet, but I'll look for it. We need like a clown show, gong show theme. Krusty the Clown. Krusty the Clown here. Janet Badditt spellin' yellin'. No, that's not a good clown's name. It's not. Sideshow Bob was a clown, and Krusty the Clown, yes. But you have to apply Sideshow Bob to someone in the Federal Reserve. You stole my Let Them Eat Cake Lagarde. That's fine, man. You're a Patreon account contributor. It's appreciated. And thank you very much to my over 200 Patreon account contributors, so I can focus on making informational, educational edutainment like this with research, information, analysis, content, and make a living from it. Even though YouTube's trying to ruin me financially. I think my ad revenues are collapsing again. And my channel's not growing anymore again. After growing, like, they let me add 500 new subscribers again over the last, 2 weeks, and then it hit 0 again. So thank you to Patreon account contributors, so many of them. Hopefully it'll be over 300 in 12 months or less, and a dozen or so PayPal contributors, and people throw me a tip once in a while. Much appreciated. I need to call it a circus. It's really turning into a circus. I think the dollar is finally reacting to the Fed's balance sheet and the repo announcements, the repo press releases. I think people are digesting the repo press releases and saying, my God, why did they just do another repo press release? Ben, I really don't do interviews for many more channels, though. I rarely do any more interviews. I mean, I get requests all the time. I just don't really do interviews. I will think about it. I have a lot of requests. I've turned them all down for a while now. No, I haven't done one. I haven't done one in over a year. I've just been focusing on my own content. That China video I did, China's very dangerous fiat currency and credit situation, that got almost 1,000 likes. That would be my first video with 1,000 likes. It's like over 970. Put what link? Oh, the link to the interview? Okay, I'll put it in the live chat with Claudio Burio. Okay, it's in the live chat link. Ben Bozo Bernanke, pretty good. Pennywise Powell, yeah, that's good. Pennywise Powell is good, but Pennywise is old school clown. Pennywise is like the old school clown. Pennywise is like the depressed clown. Pennywise is like pre-1920s, like depressed clown, Great Depression clown. Oh, that's a good one, Anthony. Neil Sideshow Kashkari. Bingo. That's a good one. Oh, it's from the new... Okay. It's from the new scary movies. Okay, I don't watch those. Janet Yellen loves to bake cookies, so I just picture her in like a sprinkle, like an apron with cookies on it and sprinkles in a weird like clown sugary thing costume. Bubbles the Clown, that is good. Ben Bubbles the Clown Bernanke. That would be better than Bernanke Bubbles the Clown. Ben Bubbles the Clown Bernanke. That would have been a good one. So, this clown show is going to continue. It's either going to be a permanent repo facility or these term repos are going to keep extending in duration and keep rolling. And as Kyle Bass says, a rolling loan gathers no loss. So maybe the plan is to keep rolling these repos over. And then the Fed doesn't add all of these repos into their balance sheet because they say, hey, look, we didn't add all these repos to their balance sheet, even though the Fed's balance sheet is increasing more than the not QE. So maybe that's the plan. The plan is to keep rolling these repos over, longer and longer term loans. What can we do about it? It'd be nice to get Fed audit right to your congressman. Both political parties, Republicans and Democrats. That's how Ron Paul got it. If there is enough support from Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, Thomas Massie, congressman in Kentucky, and Senator Rand Paul in Kentucky, and maybe Justin Amash of Michigan, can get a audit the Fed bill passed and we can find out. So the pace the Fed's balance sheet growth, the chart, you really have to see this chart from the end of August. It's up a lot. The Fed's official balance sheet. This is making some of the other QE programs of the past where there's $20 billion a month in bond buying. The Fed's doing that or more in a week. Over the last 3 weeks, it's averaged more than $20 billion a week. And past QE programs were $20 billion or something like that a month for some of the QE programs. Trump has been already goosing the stock market just with his tweets, though. It's fooling the high-frequency trading algorithms. It's not fooling human beings. And again, I was just kidding about the term repo drinking game, okay? I'm not endorsing anyone taking a bunch of sips or chugging shots or anything, okay? Because I know I'm going to get emails and comments in the comment section. There's going to be like a couple of those people who I didn't block who are accusing me of being an alcoholic or whatever. Yasser says, not even one Chinese media has announced anything. Yeah, I would take that as a sign. Because the Chinese government controls that. So I would take that as a sign. Okay, well, I think I covered pretty much everything as far as my thesis now on why the dollar is getting weak. I think finally the Fed's official balance sheet increases are starting to matter to the dollar, and also these repo announcements. I think people really started to take a look at this last repo announcement and say, why did they do this extra one? There's something here that is not making sense. And I think it has to do with the hedge funds, potentially more than one long-term capital management, and potentially, I think it's more than one bank. I think it's multiple banks, one or at least more than one bank that is in trouble with liquidity, and I think it's more than one large hedge fund. Okay, and that's it for tonight. And maybe this Repo Madness will eventually calm down. I'm skeptical though, and I can actually cover other topics. I'd like to cover other topics for you guys, but you know, if there's going to be more repo stories, I'm just going to keep making fun of the Federal Reserve for this clown show that we have. It literally is a three-ring circus. Hopefully someone could get the word to Keith McCullough and the cartoonist at Hedgeye. Really need to see a Hedgeye economic cartoon with Repo Madness and Jerome Powell in a clown suit at his press conference talking about repo. Really need an economic cartoon like that. A Repo Madness economic cartoon. Get the word to Keith McCullough at Hedgeye and the economic cartoonist at Hedgeye. We need a Repo Madness economic cartoon. We need a lot of them. I would much rather laugh in these times. Anthony says he should juggle CLOs. Oh, that's awesome. Yep. Yeah. Powell can be in a clown suit. He can be at a congressional testimony, and while he's talking, his nose could be getting larger like Pinocchio, and then he could be juggling these balls that say like CLOs, forward dollar swaps. He could be juggling those things. Mikhail says modern day P.T. Barnum is Trump. I think it's more accurate to say the modern day P.T. Barnum is Elon Musk. But Trump and Musk do have some similarities, especially from their past where they screwed over little guys that work for them like contractors. It's really sad what Trump did in the past to construction contractors. They got screwed over. Small guys. He intentionally didn't pay them. Sean says, how about the Simpsons episode where Homer is daydreaming about clown college while his colleagues at the power plant are on fire? Oh, I love it. There's so many clown shows. Like this congressional hearing. Oh my God. It's so bad. It's almost like we're living in like multiple realities already. That's how ridiculous everything is. Christopher asks, how many banksters can fit in a clown car? That is a good question, and I would like to see an economic cartoonist draw it. They can all try to fit in either a clown car or the low interest rate party bus. I really love that economic cartoon, the low interest rate party bus. I think the low interest rate party bus was a brilliant idea. So we can stick in the low interest rate party bus, we can stick a bunch of central bank clown show central bankers, we can stick a bunch of unicorns, Silicon Valley unicorns, shale oil unicorns, and pretty much any other person we want to make fun of, we can put them in the low interest rate party bus. Okay, I'm not that good at drawing economic cartoons, so if someone wants to take a stab at it, you can email me at wallstreetformainstreet@gmail.com, and maybe it'll end up as a background on my podcast. No, I'm not going to comment on any junior minors. Okay, well, I think that's it for tonight. My voice is starting to go. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And I'm going to work on creating unique, thought-provoking research, analysis, and other types of content. Mixing in some edutainment. Occasionally some jokes. But no stand-up.